Listen, and welcome to A Link to the Filmcast. I'm your host, David Reese, in the show where we adventure across the realms of Hyrule and the Silver Screen. This is our very first episode of the podcast, where we're going to be looking at Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind and getting the show on the road. So we're going to start the episodes with some listener feedback or some fan mail, whatever you guys send in talking about the show. If there's reviews on Apple Podcasts, I'll read them live here on the show. Since this is the very first episode, there's nothing to review yet. There's not really any comments to say, so we're going to skip the fan mail portion, and we're going to do a random Zelda wiki page. We'll pull a random Zelda wiki page and explore different topics that the Zelda wiki has, and just see if we've ever put a second thought into certain locations, things, items, characters. Admittedly, the first time I did this, I got a Breath of the Wild shrine, and I was like, oh, of course, we're going to have so many shrines from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom on here. And then there probably all the light roots might have their own page. I hope the Korok seeds don't have their own page, or else that'll really throw off the randomization. Luckily, the first page I got isn't that bad, like a Korok seed. It's a unique location. I'm looking at the Goron Graveyard from Majora's Mask. Now, I remember this place. This is where you get the Goron mask in Majora's Mask. This is the place right outside the mountain village, right outside of Snowhead. This is one of your first real tests with the lens of truth. You can't see the ladder rungs built into the cliff, so you use the lens of truth, and that's how you're able to kind of navigate up the puzzle. I think it's also a puzzle in the sense that you have limited magic, so you kind of got to allocate your resources carefully. Then after you beat Snowhead and the winter subsides, I believe there's just a ladder that you can climb up without needing the lens of truth. I'm just reading the article here quick. Yeah, you can get hot spring water. You pull up his grave and fills up with a hot spring. Yeah, it was a pretty unique location, and I guess that's how we'll start the show. I just want to pull up a random article and talk about it, see what people's experiences are with that, and we'll jump into our feature film. This is going to be a film episode where I kind of go through a movie, talk about what I like about it, and we'll just kind of explore. So let's see. I first came across the movie coincidentally just as an adult. I didn't see this as a kid. I just had some mature themes for a kid, but I first saw it like 2 years ago when I saw it on HBO Max. Now it's Max, I guess. But they got the whole Studio Ghibli archive on streaming, which I never thought I'd see. I guess that was part of their deals to help finance The Boy and the Heron. Great film. I just bought it on a DVD, Blu-ray. I got the Steelbook. I loved that movie. I saw that one in theaters. But we're not talking about Miyazaki. Well, we'll talk about Miyazaki a little, but we're not talking about the other films. We're going to try to stay focused on his second film, which is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. This isn't quite Studio Ghibli yet. This is the second film. It's based off of Magna. It's based off of a story he's been writing, and apparently it has its own wiki or a fandom site, and there's more to the story than what's actually in the movie. We're going to stick with the movie. First impressions, what appealed to me in this movie is it really gave me some Dune vibes with the big desert, giant creatures, not giant worms. In this case, they're giant bugs, the Olm. But it's an apocalyptic Earth. There's a heroine, and there's rival factions kind of feuding with each other. That's one of the main things that drew me in. When you're watching the movie, you see some heavy environmentalism messages and some man versus nature themes throughout the film as well. Which, if you know this director, if you know Hayao Miyazaki's films, those messages are prevalent in almost all of them, especially in something like Princess Mononoke. This is, like I said, his second film. This came out in 1984. I believe this was the last film before he started Studio Ghibli. His next film was Castle in the Sky, and I believe that one was Studio Ghibli. There was some weird distribution deal with the Disney company. So depending on how you're watching it, you can watch it sub or dub. If you're watching the dub, it got dubbed in around 2005 by Walt Disney. And that's when you'll have the Shia LaBeouf, Uma Thurman, Patrick Stewart, those people doing the voices. So those are those are some quick production beats I found. There's some scenes that overlap with Zelda I kind of want to talk about as we get to it, but I kind of want to go through the movie. Movie begins, we get this guy walking through Apocalypse Town. Barren wasteland, big town, nothing going on. He's just kind of walking through. He's got some ostrich-looking things with masks. And I thought the masks were kind of cute because they matched his face. They kind of had the droopy ears on the mask, so everyone had matching masks. Talking about the fungus. Apparently there's a fungus, the spores that if you breathe them, you get sick and you can die. Kind of gives me some Last of Us vibes with the spores and the fungus. I don't know. That might just be me. And then we're presented with a title card and a little preface talking about 1,000 years after civilization. This is where we are. There was 7 days of fire, and kind of goes through the opening credits with a mosaic and talking about the place setting the table, kind of building the world. This is I would kind of classify this part of the film as the prologue. One of the things that kind of strike me as I'm watching this is it's 2D animation, which you don't really see too much anymore in 2024. Most animation that you see is that 3D, Pixar-y, Disney kind of style, or DreamWorks. I guess all the big studios kind of have their own style. But you don't really see new 2D animation too often. Or if you do, it's the very basic or simplistic, like the, I guess Bluey is... Why am I using Bluey for an example? That's silly. But yeah, Bluey is like a 2D animation, but that's heavily computerized. Probably nothing but with that is done by hand, where you're looking at some of these landscapes and you're looking at these bugs and you're like, these were done by hand. Yeah, they might use some animation tricks for like moving them across the screen or how they interact with each other. But the fact that back in 1984, CGI wasn't really a thing. Everything was hand-drawn. So as I'm watching this film, even just the opening parts where she's gliding around, I'm seeing the landscapes, and he does this in a lot of his films. I know Spirited Away has some beautiful landscapes. The Boy and the Heron, which is a relatively new movie. I don't know how much of that is hand-drawn versus computerized, but in Nausicaa, it's very prominent. She's on this cool glider thing. She gets off. Right away, you know she can take care of herself. She's got this big gun. We don't know it's a flare gun yet, unless you know. But she's got this big gun. She's walking into the forest, and she finds this great thing, this great bug shell. Apparently, these giant bugs, they molt, and this is kind of where she gives the exposition dump of, man, if those spores come down, she mentions that they can kill her as she's watching the spores come down through her mask and underneath the eyelid thing. So kind of explains the story from there. And then we have our first action sequence of the movie, kind of setting the tone of what this movie is gonna be. Is the movie just landscapes and someone going around? There's gonna be some action. We get an early chase sequence with an chasing our ostrich guy from earlier. Nausicaa is able to stun with some flash grenades, and they're able to escape. Introduces the ostrich Rider guy as Lord Yupa. And if you're watching it on the dub, that's going to be your Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard voice. And I don't know, there's something about when you're watching this that voice comes out through and you're like, oh my gosh, that's like the perfect voice for this kind of guy. That might just be me. Nausicaa finds that he's got a little animal on him. A little fox squirrel is what it's called. And I watched Castle in the Sky recently, and that has a fox squirrel in it as well. So I thought that was pretty neat. Half fox, half squirrel. Cute little thing. They decided to show some of Nausicaa's personality by having the squirrel bite her. But she's tough about it. She's not afraid. She understands that it's just scared nature and kind of showcasing Nausicaa as a caring person. It's showing her. She immediately becomes friends with the fox squirrel and Tito, I believe the name is. And then we're introduced to probably the coolest setting of the movie, which the movie is named after. They go back to the Valley of the Wind. And this has functional purpose, and it's just really cool to look at. So the function is it's between the sea and the jungle, and with the wind off the sea, it blows the spores back into the toxic jungle, and there's always like a constant breeze or a wind, so the citizens don't have to worry about being poisoned. They can walk around without masks, and they can have unpolluted crops and agriculture and a nice little living space. Now the aesthetic gives me heavy Hateno vibes. It's got these windmills. It's got a castle in the middle. Now that's something that's really cool. Like you got your town houses and whatever, and right in the middle you got your castle where you got your king, and they mention Nausicaa as the princess. So she's a princess apparently, and she does her fair share of work. As Yupa's coming into town, she's fixing a windmill. People are gushing over him. Apparently they haven't seen him in a while, and he gets such great privileges like naming babies. Someone has a baby and he's like, oh yeah, I'll come up with a good name for it. Very interesting. We get an exposition dump. We're introduced to King Jill and some old lady, Obaba, some blind lady, and she kind of talks about the tapestry, and there's a prophecy that some prince in blue will come in a field of gold and he'll save humankind. About 20 minutes in, that's how the movie starts up. You're kind of asking, okay, world building, where are we going to go with this? And then we get our first act, where I think this is where I would kind of earmark the movie actually beginning. Nausicaa wakes up middle of the night, wind's blowing, and it's like something's not quite right. We got two guards. One of them is named Mito. He's got an eye patch. He kind of becomes the citizen surrogate for the film. He is kind of the guy that represents the people of the village, the people of the valley that interacts with Nausicaa. So instead of having a bunch of different voice actors and a bunch of different villagers always interacting with Nausicaa, he's kind of like the point man. He's kind of like the guy that's talking to her from the perspective of the villagers or the other guards and Lord Yupa. And then we get classic Miyazaki style. We get an airship. Airship's flying in, covered in bugs, crashes into the hillside. There's a princess on board. She dies in the grass and requests Nausicaa to burn the cargo for her last words. There's bugs everywhere. Nausicaa takes care of them. There's one in the wreckage that she's able to kind of draw away. And as there's the wreckage, Lord Yupa and the others, kind of like the citizens, kind of checking everything out, seeing if there's survivors they can help, see a giant heart. They have these giant warriors, and in the beginning tapestry, we kind of see giant warriors that destroyed the earth. These big weaponized men, these giants that apparently caused the apocalypse. And there's a giant heart or embryo of one on the ship, which is bad news because why would this people have such a giant weapon? Lord Yupa's talking. He's heard some rumblings of the Pagite with the heart with the giant warrior, and he fears that this could be a move of war. I guess this is where we should probably talk about. There's three groups of people in this world. There's the Pagite, which that princess on the airship was. She had the chain. She was being held prisoner. There's the Pagite people. We see them more later in the movie. Not too much is actually done with them other than showing how desperate they get during war. And then we get the Tolmekans, the second group of people. And the Tolmekans are like the war people. The power is the way of life, the Spartans. And they got this weird, like, knight in armor aesthetic as well. So as their warriors are walking around, they're in medieval ages, dressed up like knights. And then the third group of people are the people of the valley. And this film kind of paints everyone kind of into like a good guy, bad guy group. When you learn more about them, it makes sense. Or there might be some gray area, or they're actually justified. Next day comes and more Tomekans come. More Tomekan airships. A special elite team comes, and these guys are jerks. They come in, first off, they kill the king, their special elite team, just in time for Nausicaa to get there. Nausicaa goes berserk. Lord Yupa has to step in and be like, guys, your ship crashed, and these people of the valley came to help, and now you're coming and invading the valley, and the Tomekans want the valley for themselves because it has air that people can kind of live with. It's not quite that. The Tomekans want to burn the jungle so they can start new. And Lord Yupa or Yubaba warns of the bugs rampaging. That's what it is. Because if you upset the jungle, the bugs rampage and upsets nature. So the bugs are the protectors of the forest in a way. And they're outnumbered, surrounded. Nausicaa has to work with them. And we're introduced to Kashana. I believe she's the Uma Thurman. Kashana is the Uma Thurman character. She's the queen or the princess of the Tomekans. She's got the metal arms, and she wants to oversee the activation of the giant warrior, and she's in charge of the operation. Then we get a nice little scene where we learn from Nausicaa that she's got little inner botanist in her. She's got underground garden. She's finds that if she has just natural dirt and water, they're not contaminated. It's the forest or something in the outside world that's contaminating things. And then Kashana wants to take some hostages, and Nausicaa, the princess, she wants to take them home. And this is kind of where the hero's journey, I think, begins. This is kind of the call to adventure for Nausicaa. You got your prologue. We set up the environment, we set up the world, we showed life in the valley, and now we got this outside force. We got these Tomekan peoples coming in, and now Nausicaa has to play her cards or go on the journey. So they go on a journey, they get shot down by some Pagite fighter, and this is Shia LaBeouf back from 2005. He plays Asbel, and they go beneath the jungle as the planes are crashing and burning. Something the movie doesn't, I guess, with 2D animation, be hard to capture, but think about having three big airships like that go down. How many people are dying right there? They're mindless faces. We don't really know who they are. Kind of the syndrome of having a faceless army. There's just a bunch of faces of bad guys, so you don't really care. But there's still people going down by one pilot. We get some standoff scenes. We get some bonding between Nausicaa and Asbel. We find out that Asbel's sister, the princess of Pagite, Estella, was the girl that Nausicaa found in the wreckage of the Tomekan ship. I'd kind of like to know more of like the differences. So then we also get this We get this scene where Nausicaa's munching on some nuts, her and Tito, and then Asbel gives them a try, and they're just gross. He doesn't like them. And I'd be interested in to explore the different cultures of the people. It's not really explored here in the film, and maybe it's explored more in the source material. He only had 2 hours to work with. 2 hours for an animated film like this. They fix the gliders, and then they're learning about the toxic jungle. They're underneath it, so they get stuck in some quicksand, or was that earlier? They fall through, and they come into an area where things are pure. The water is pure, the air is fine, and they make the big exposition, they say it out loud, where with the tree biology, the trees absorb the pollution, and then they petrify and turn into sand. Then the bugs are there to protect the pure sand under the jungle. That's why the bugs don't like it if you're around the jungle creating trouble, because they're trying to protect the pureness which lies beneath it. Then we get to the point where smash cut to citizens of the valley. They find some spores in the woods near the house or near the people. Some spores that weren't cleaned up when the Tolmecan ship came around the first time, and they try to go to their captors, and they're like, guys, we need our flamethrowers and stuff. We gotta burn the spores. If the spores mature and they get into the air, we're all done for. So the captors reluctantly give them everything except their rifles. Here's the thing about a flamethrower. A flamethrower is still a flamethrower. It can be used as a weapon, and the people of the valley rebel against their overlords, these new invaders, which, as their princess, Kashana, is away, doesn't leave a good impression on the number 2 who she left in charge there. So Nausicaa and Asbel, they arrive to Pajite, and you can tell that the city looks a lot like Arrakeen from Dune. A big desert city, big walls surrounding it, in the walls destroyed by giant Olm. You see giant Olm carcasses everywhere, and you get these Tolmecans that come down to greet Nausicaa and Asbel. Turns out they're the Pajite people. So what had happened was the Pajite people, and this is kind of the crux of where I connected the dots of the story. Pajite people discovered this giant warrior. They unearthed him from wherever they got him from, brought him back to town, and the Tolmecans found out about it. So the Tolmecans came to invade Pajite in search for the giant warrior. Pajite people were overwhelmed, so as a last resort, they decided to lure bugs into their city to fight the Tolmecans back, because they couldn't take the Tolmecans. So they apparently what they're good at is baiting the bugs to locations that they want the bugs to go. And they hear about the plan that they currently have, where since the Tolmecans are in the valley, they're baiting a bug towards the valley. That way the bugs can take out the Tolmecans. Nausicaa and Asbel openly don't like that and throw Nausicaa in prison. She gets a little potato room on their airship where she gets some help of Asbel's mother. She gets help and she's able to escape. We get another action sequence and where the Tolmecans and some others show up. We get this cool scene with Lord Yupa coming down and showing everyone why he's dubbed like the best swordsman in the land. Then we enter our third act, or this is kind of our final act. We got the people of the valley, and we got the Tolmecans in a standoff. Angry mob of bugs coming. Oh, hi, Navi. That's right, I said Navi. I have a little puppy. Her name's Navi. She's checking in on me as I record here. Anyway, Nausicaa's able to track down the bait. And it's for the bait, these Pajite guys have, it looks like a hot air balloon basket without the balloon part. And hanging from it is a little baby Olm full of a bunch of spurs and spikes. And that's what they're using to enrage the Olm and lure them towards the valley. So Nausicaa jumps towards the basket to take over. She takes 2 bullets, one to the shoulder, one to the foot, and takes them down. With the baby Olm dying and enraged, she's still trying to save it. The movie has this motif where when the bugs are enraged, their eyes are red. And we can see that here with the baby Olm. And she's trying to apologize for the people. She's tell the Olm she's sorry. and the baby is just trying to get away. It's trying to go into the acid lake. Nausicaa's trying to fight it back. She even gets pushed and her foot steps into it. And then the Ohm starts to see what happened. The Ohm sees what happens and is starting to read Nausicaa. There's these golden noodles, these spaghetti noodles coming out of the Ohm. Interesting. I believe it's how they communicate, because we get a little scene of Nausicaa as a child trying to protect a baby Ohm while all the villagers are trying to take it to kill it. And the Ohm is seeing this memory and probably associating Nausicaa as a protector, knowing that even when she was young, she was protecting bugs. The bug is calmed. Then Nausicaa finds big gun, and she's able to demand a ride back to the herd to create a peace. Kashana, the Tomican princess, she hatches the warrior too early. I don't know if hatches is the right word. It's not an egg. She brings out the warrior too early, though. He's got one solid atomic breath, big mouthy blast in it, destroys a bunch of Ohm. But then as it's charging up for the second one, it just kind of falls apart and turns into a puddle. So it wasn't quite matured or ready. Stampede comes, Nausicaa and the baby stand in front of it, trying to stop it, and boom. As the citizens of the valley, as the Tomican warriors are all trying to get to high ground on the submarine in the middle of the desert. At one point, someone says something about how this maybe once touched the stars, because this is 1,000 years after civilization, so they don't know what it is. From us, the viewer, we can obviously see it looks like a big washed up sub. And as they're all realizing that this is it for them and they're about to die, the Ohm stop, and all the red rage in all the eyes of the herd goes away. All the eyes start turning blue, and all the Ohm are focusing on Nausicaa in the center, how she sacrificed herself for that baby Ohm. I wouldn't be surprised if the baby Ohm's talking to the bigger Ohm, telling them what happened, and a whole bunch of golden noodles come out. All the Ohm's little rods or whatever are coming out, and they're all kind of lifting Nausicaa up. Apparently they got healing power. I think we saw a little bit with the baby earlier, and she's healed. And now, once we see her waking up and feeling better and all healed, then that's kind of when the movie is all happy-go-lucky. The music comes in, feels good. Obaba talks about how it's the fulfillment of the prophecy, and instead of a prince in blue in a golden field being the little noodles from the Ohm, it's a princess, which will go on to kind of reflect Miyazaki's future movies, where most of his protagonists are females. Most of his lead characters are girls. And the wind comes back. There was a section of the movie when things got dark that the wind went away, and now it's back all of a sudden. That's more of a symbolic thing. I don't understand how the Ohm are done with rage, the wind can come back. I guess it might be a reflection of the environment. If the environment is full of rage and hate, then I guess the wind's part of the environment. So if you can learn to live with it, the environment can learn to live with you as well. That's Nausicaa in the Valley of... As I was putting together this episode, I kept saying Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. But it's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which I think if I said either, people would understand what I'm talking about. This is a great film. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. I kind of just did a little crash course. I kind of want to test different formats for this show. Let me know what you think. Do you like that kind of walkthrough? Did I go into too much detail, too little detail? I mentioned the very Hatno vibes in the village earlier, and that's something that Zelda hasn't explored the man versus nature aspect too much yet. I believe there's potential for more, especially in like a Princess Mononoke kind of way, if Nintendo wanted to go in that direction. Some other fun facts about this project is that this project was made in like 9 months. This project was made in under a year, which is crazy for me to think about given that this is hand animation and it's 2 hours worth. Great. This is a great film. Highly recommend it. I wouldn't call it an anime, even though it's a Japanese film. Anime is a weird little... Anime, I feel, is more of a genre than a medium. I mean, I'll talk about it more in the future, but I think of it more as a medium than, or anime as a genre than a medium. Something can be animated but not anime, but something could be live action but have like anime tropes, and that just probably won't appear real well. So that's something right in. If you have, how do you look at anime? Is that a genre? Is all Japanese animation anime? What makes an anime versus just a Japanese story telling of a story? Because there's so much that it encompasses. Right into ZeldaFilmcast@gmail.com, or click the suggestion, send a comment link in the description. That's going to be it for this week's episode. If you like what you heard, tell a friend and leave us a review. If you have any movie suggestions or feedback, I'd love to hear them. See the links in the show notes. If you'd like to watch the next movie ahead of time, next week we're not going to watch a movie. Next week we're going to talk about the upcoming Zelda game, Echoes of Wisdom. What we've seen so far, what we anticipate, and what we're looking forward to. So thanks for listening as we celebrate these classic adventure films. And until next time, may the Triforce be with you.